Welcome back to Close Up. She shattered the glass ceiling in the New Hampshire congressional delegation, becoming the first woman to represent the Granite State on Capitol Hill a decade ago. Now, as Congresswoman Carol Shea Porter heads into retirement, she's here this morning to reflect on a career in Washington that few predicted when she launched her first campaign as an activist in the 2006 cycle. Congresswoman Carol Shea Porter, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
So take us through the decision-making process on retirement. When did you know that you had kind of had enough down there in Washington?
Well, it really wasn't that I'd had enough in Washington. I know it looks bad and it is bad, but I really enjoyed that work. I love the work and I care deeply about the issues and the people of New Hampshire and this country. It was more that I decided it was time to pause for a little bit, as I said, because we had just been blessed with a new grandson, our first, and you know, it was a difficult start for him. Everything's fine now, but it made me realize that I couldn't be fully present, and there's something so special about, you know, having a grandchild. And it also meant that I could have time with family and to do some things that my wonderful patient husband has accepted putting off. So it was really around Independence Day when I was with my family at a family reunion. I realized I didn't know half of what they were talking about, you know, because it's a wonderful job, but you are always on the road every 3 days, 4 days. I traveled a lot with the military, so I was away then. And I just decided to take a pause. When we say retirement, I kind of choke because I'm not really...
You're not done yet? You're certainly by no means...
I'm going to serve on some nonprofit boards and do some things. You don't just turn away when you are an advocate and care about issues. I think everybody knows that you have to stay engaged and make our community and our state and country better. You mentioned being an advocate. You were kind of on the leading edge of this phenomenon of the activist, of the motivated outsider coming in and kind of breaking down the halls of Congress into power and things like that. You've remained pretty much the same person you've always been. But in what ways did this sort of 12-year experience change you, do you think? Well, it's changed me a lot. There are things that I am absolutely thrilled about. We were able to pass health care. It was very difficult. You know, I said I didn't come to warm a seat, I came to get something done, but in 2010, I think 64 of us lost our seats over that, and it was absolutely worth it. But that was a change to see how difficult, you know, passing this legislation was, and to see the rage really around the country, and how satisfying it is now to see people angry when they talk about eliminating the health care. So I've been there long enough to see, you know, that people were very resistant when it came, and very resistant to losing this health care. And of course, we all know that 50,000 New Hampshireites have health insurance now because of that, and about 6,000 people receive treatment for opioid addiction using, you know, the ACA money. So that was one thing that I was proud of, and you know, saw a big change in the mindset of people. And there were others as well. I felt like when I came in '07 that we were really going to make big, deep changes, and I didn't anticipate sliding back, and of course we did slide back. You know, I was very happy to be part of raising the minimum wage, for example, in 2007. January, it was the first time it's been raised in 10 years. It hasn't been raised since, and so I thought maybe we were going to make our tax code fairer so that corporations would actually have to pay, you know, those that escape it, and you know, we haven't really done anything like that, but we've done a lot of very good things that I'm proud of, and the work that I have chosen to do. I started the Asthma and Allergy Caucus, and I was able to, you know, work hard for people, including my family, that suffer from asthma. My mother died of COPD, so I've had the reward of working on issues that were personal to me and others, and I've also watched how hard it really is to make change, and then to keep that change permanent.
Right. That pendulum has swung back and forth, and of course the first district can go wherever the national mood goes, essentially being so purple as it is.
But less so now. You know, I was the first one in, I think, almost 30 years, and at the time everybody was Republican, and so, and I served with Republican senators from New Hampshire, and then we saw the change. So I do believe that it will stay Democrat for a while to come.
You had that epic field of people looking to succeed.
Yes.
Were you surprised at all by how many Democrats came out to run in that primary?
Yes and no. You know, I was surprised that, wow, I didn't realize, you know, so many people were like waiting, right? And I would laugh about that. But I also know that people are really engaged now. Ever since the 2016 election, people are watching very closely. And we saw that tremendous turnout in New Hampshire and around the country. And people understood it's a referendum on who we are. And what do we care about as a nation? Are we going to embrace the values and principles that George H. Bush did, the 1,000 points of light, caring about each other, respect for other nations, or are we going to stay kind of coarse and apparently indifferent to or even angry at other countries? And I think that vote that we saw and the number of people turning out was very clear that people wanted us to remember civility and remember that we could differ and still be like George H. Bush was. There's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, including me, talking about what a fine person he was and how he made us proud.
And of course, President Trump, you've stated your opposition clearly, and you've also come out in favor of impeachment. Do you think the new Congress is going to go there? That we see the Mueller investigation progressing. Do you think Congress is going to be impeaching the president in 2019 or 2020?
Only if the Republicans want to also. Now, if you ask me, do I think the Republicans are going to want to? I do. Yes, I do. They lost pretty heavily in the midterm. They lost places that they never thought they would lose. We never thought they would lose in Orange County, California, for example, and other areas. And I think he would be very heavy for them to have to carry into a 2020 presidential. So depending on what we learn from the Mueller investigation, and I do think that we should protect the Mueller investigation. I have supported that so that we can get all the facts there. But it is starting to look, difficult for the president to hold on and run again.
What do your Republican colleagues say? Obviously, they project one thing on cable news and in their speeches, but when you're talking to them in the halls,
they know.
Are they concerned? Are they worried about it?
They're very concerned, yeah. I mean, not all of them, of course, but yeah, the ones that I talk to, they're very concerned. And most of them really don't like the tone of the president. They don't like him tweeting. They don't like the callousness. They don't. I travel a lot on the Armed Services Committee. I travel with Republicans all the time. I like to do that. It gives us a chance to talk to each other. And they see and hear what I see and hear as we travel around the world. We recently, this year, took a trip through Asia to measure how the Chinese have had such an impact, on nations as we look like we're pulling back some. And they heard what I heard. So yes, they have concerns. It doesn't mean that all of them have broken, with the president, but it does mean that they are not oblivious to what's happening. And they do want us to be able to work more together than we've been able to. And interestingly, a lot of the Republicans, and they'll say it publicly as well as the Democrats, know and want the House and the legislative branch to reassert its independence from the White House. 3 separate co-equal branches of government. And so we have not done that, and there's more pressure to do that now.
Speaker Pelosi not only survived this latest challenge to her authority, but also kind of gave a little bit of a political masterclass on how to tame a caucus, if you will, down there in Washington. Do you think people underestimated her?
Yes. I think they always underestimate her. And I think they also look at her differently from the way they look at, some of the other leaders. I mean, she's the only female leader, as you know, the only female that's been speaker. And when she sits at the table at the White House or anywhere else, she's pretty much sitting, as the only woman there. And I think they often underestimate her and make assumptions about her that aren't so. What I want people to know about her, whether you like her or not, or whether you agree with all her positions, I certainly haven't, but I wanted her to be speaker again because she's a very skillful legislator. She's an incredibly effective leader, like you said, taming the caucus. But there's something else that really drives Nancy Pelosi, and people don't realize this. She's a mother of 5, and she has, a large number of grandchildren, and she's very Catholic. She's very, very Catholic, Italian Catholic, as she'll say. And this leads her to talk in terms of her faith very often. I don't see it on television when she's speaking, but when she's in caucus talking about it or talking about it. So it shapes her thinking about policy.
So this isn't retirement for Carol Shea Porter.
No.
Could we see you potentially interested in another run for office down the line? Say if Jeanne Shaheen decides to retire, the U.S. Senate seat potentially opens up. It's something you'd be interested in.
Well, I can't get there. Let me just get through the holidays, okay? I'm so overwhelmed right now, you know, closing offices and, you know, trying to get ready for everything. So what I'm looking at right now, though, is, like I said, I'm going to serve on nonprofit boards. I want to do that. And I'm happy. I have tried to talk to high schools and college classes about civics and talk in a nonpartisan way, you know, about how things have happened. I've done that in a number of places in the district. I like to do that. I think most kids and most young people never have a chance to meet a member or hear any of the stories behind the headlines. And so I'm always happy to go do a class, and I'd be glad to do that. And I'll be active with the former members of Congress, and they go around and speak to various groups, etc. So I think it'll be, you know, interesting. I will miss this job a lot, but I realize, and my wonderful staff, and I think the constituent services they deliver to New Hampshire have made them pretty famous. So I'll miss them, and I'll miss my colleagues, and I'll miss all of that. But right now, I'm just really, like I said, getting through, and then we're going to do a little traveling, and then I'll look at everything.
All right. Well, enjoy your holidays, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you.